Thank you for joining us today for 10 Minutes with the Artist, a discussion about the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're proud to have Sam Goodman, who is completing a thesis in architecture at North Dakota State University. We invited him here today to speak about his research and the creation of artifacts in preparation for his defense. Redefining the cybernetic being is a critique of modern technological systems that conceal awareness of social distress and the universal condition. We may be chained to technology, but Sam's work reminds us to recognize the lens through which society is being portrayed to us and to question what power is curating the sites we can and can't populate. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. So Sam, thank you very much for joining us for 10 Minutes with the Artist. So we've been transferring our bodies into technologies for a long time. I'm thinking about maybe transferring writing into typewriters, maybe as an example. So I'm kind of curious if contemporary cybernetic technology really is such a big change or such a big threat.
I would say it is. I guess in the past, yeah, we have always been very, tied to the technology that we use to interact with the world. Whether it is simple mechanisms like a lever, or whether it's something like an iPhone. But I think that the key thing with us now that sort of involves this danger or this threat is the sort of universal interconnectedness between all of us. It's just like exponentially beyond anything that we've encountered before. And everything is new, right? Technology is always evolving, but specifically when it involves communication is where things start to get a little dicey, I would say. And I think that there's particular concerns involving how various powers are involved beyond just the individual within these interactions, facilitated by these things that are now much more integrated into our own existences and consciousnesses than something like a typewriter per se.
So if I leave my phone at home, is that an act of rebellion against some sort of system? And what does it mean if I just decide to bring it with me?
I would say, it's a double-edged sword both ways. So yeah, you leave it at home, that is absolutely an act of rebellion. I mean, you're off the grid per se, right? You could run off in the woods and nobody's gonna know where you are, right? I mean, you fall and hurt yourself, right? You don't have an emergency way to sort of immediately communicate with the rest of society and sort of I guess use all the benefits that come with that. But at the same time, if you do bring it with you, of course, you have your magic multi-tool in the palm of your hand that makes you a walking computer, Google at your fingertips. You have every answer to any question within reason that you think that you need an answer to. But then of course you have the same things like a camera that could be watching you, or a GPS that knows your location, knows where you've been, and all this. So I mean, of course it's it's sort of you just sort of have to have all or nothing in a way.
I kind of wonder if with these sorts of technologies, like a phone that has a connection to the internet and has all this connection to all this information, if we're actually sort of underutilizing this tool, is it like comfort that we can put all of this information in one place and not have to think about things? Or do we actually become maybe more one with all that information because it's accessible?
I think it's a little bit of both. In a perfect world, I guess in a vacuum, right? We would all be sophisticated enough to, have and use these things to their absolute, best purpose, right? Whatever that might be, absolutely exercising it to, its maximum potential in your own day-to-day life. But I mean, it all becomes a question of, systemization and like how much do you want this to actually, impact your overall, I guess, purpose, maybe is what I would say. but at the same time, I would say, I mean, it acts more as just sort of a safety net for the modern man in a way, right? It's like it's something that's always there for you. That's always more so that standing reserve, that thing that's always present, but now it's sort of universal. So I mean, I would absolutely say that all of what we have right now with the internet and information is 100% underutilized by the average Joe. I mean, what do we do? We look at cat videos, we look at whatever, right? I mean, like that's not necessarily helping anybody aside from maybe your inner peace of mind or what have you. But I don't know. It's all decision based. Yet it's all there for your using, which is fascinating.
So I feel like some people could argue that that the city, which has these vast blocks, which is sort of known for its anonymity, it has a separation from nature, it has a lack of public space, would be a bigger threat than technology, which actually connects us.
I would say, yeah, in a way. I guess it depends on what city you're looking at and what, where you find yourself within that city and what little social circles you exist within that. But yeah, I think the one thing that's mainly missing is presence, human presence, between those two scenarios, right? Even if you live in the most desolate modern wasteland of a city, there's still opportunity to interact with the other variables or people within that equation, um, in a very human way. Whereas there's something missing, I think, in our universal network there that causes this sort of numbness between us. And maybe that thing is just a body, right? Maybe that's what it is. So I think that we as a species have not adapted completely to, I guess, come to terms with that psychologically. So we're still missing that element and don't necessarily have a way to simulate that or replace it within our own digital interactions with each other.
Um, so the guillotine, which we have in the gallery as part of your artifact, is in itself sort of like an act of catharsis. Um,
Yep.
and I was curious if modern technology is denying us the ability to build up emotion and release it.
Well, I think it builds it up. I think the release is where it maybe gets a little tricky. And yeah, there's ways to do that, whether you're putting yourself out there, interacting with other people via digital means. But again, I think it comes back to that element of like there's not a full release without a embodied presence, and interaction between each other there. But it's definitely a lot of buildup, I would say. I mean, if you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, right? I mean, you're just entirely absorbing, content. You're not necessarily releasing. So I think that's sort of the easier path in a way of the two, to just sort of like internalize things and sort of allow that to compile. Um, so yeah, I think that in a way there needs to be an opportunity to find a balance.
Okay. Well, at the end of our conversation, we'd like to ask a few questions about sort of your creative practice. So,
Mhm.
Sam, what time of day do you feel like you're most creative?
I would say it varies. I don't know. I would say later to midday. Yeah. I would say sort of it's more like all day, but like punctuated with dead zones is how I would say it. I mean, it all depends on when the idea strikes, I guess.
Do you listen to music or anything like that when you're creating?
Absolutely. I need music when I'm working to a point, or podcasts and things. I like to kind of keep my brain active, as much as possible. I think that, even if I'm not entirely, absorbing all of everything that I'm doing at the same time, the act of multitasking itself helps me sort of keep the gears moving.
Are you reading anything right now?
I mean, I'm beyond what I'm reading for the readings supplied by my professor. I don't really have much leisurely read time presently.
What do you think the most challenging thing is about working in the medium that you're working in to create your artifact?
The medium of the artifact, I think the tricky thing about it is bridging the sort of ephemeral nature of things like digital communication, which, I mean, there isn't really an embodied material for that we can see with our eyes, and touch with our hands at first glance, right? So I mean, you're dealing with these ideas of, how are people connected across a distance in a way that you know that you can't necessarily touch, and how do you sort of represent that struggle and sort of all the sort of, I guess, dangers that we had discussed, that come with that in a physical medium. And I think it comes in, I guess, trying to crack that open in a way and show at least sort of a depth to it, via, in this case, a representation of a series of screens, which are our most familiar sort of association with these types of things. And then how does that sort of bridge that gap, between something that, at its core, beyond is very recognizable, yet also doubles as one of those elements to sort of speak towards the familiar, icon that is a screen.
Yeah.
And, in this case, it took the form of, wood and fabric and projections.
I guess my last question for you would be, what's next?
What's next is, taking it another step farther. If you look at the artifact itself, it is, a series of these screens, of these projections that each kind of take a step towards, this idea that I'm exercising, which is, our ongoing struggle with our, modern, communications technology and the emerging technologies present in that are sort of flipping us into this like mechanized system. So I guess next is to sort of, I mean, if you look at the artifact, it starts with the guillotine and it reads sort of like a chronology, or like a sort of exploded sort of montage of these relevant sites that each embody, ideas, morals, and struggles that sort of expand from the initial, idea that is the guillotine, that is the mythos of fate and technology, and this ever progressing, thing that we cannot necessarily halt or, change, but we can do is read into it as it moves forward, and sort of try to, I guess, find a sense of meaning and wonder within that. So I guess in moving forward from the artifact itself into architecture, it becomes, a question of how do you, or how do I, in a way, sort of make this sort of, poetic sub connection, that exists somehow in between our universal connection to the internet and something that is an embodied, relationship with each other. And I think that's where the artifact lies, is, connecting those two through that medium.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'd also like to thank you all at home for watching and your interest in our professional practice and creative explorations happening here at North Dakota State University. So thank you. And for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.